Hi, and welcome to the latest in our CEO series here at Scaled. This week we have the pleasure of Richard joining us. Now, Richard is a serial entrepreneur, if I can call you that, Richard. But most recently, from the last 5 years, Richard's been CEO and founder of Lincoln-based agency, EcomOne. They are a performance marketing agency that specialise in e-commerce brands. So welcome along today, Richard, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Richard, for having me on the show. Looking forward to having a chat.
Good stuff. Well, it'd be great to just understand a little bit about you and your agency. So let's start by talking about EcomOne. Kind of what's the elevator pitch?
So EcomOne works with 7 and aspiring 8-figure e-commerce brands with their sort of e-commerce growth strategy. So we focus on 4 core pillars with that, which is around SEO, PPC, CVO, which is conversion value optimization, and digital PR. So most of our brands that we work with are running on sort of usually like Shopify, Magento, WooCommerce, BigCom, and we come in, look at what they're doing, and quite often they've hit a plateau in terms of sort of revenues and the different platforms they're working with, and then we have a look at what they're doing, and it usually then sort of ends with us delivering and working with them across all those different pillars, but quite often starting with 1 or 2, usually SEO and PPC. That's sort of my core background for getting on for 20 years, running SEO and PPC campaigns for myself, sort of back in the day in my previous business, and then setting up the agency. But yeah, we work with e-commerce brands specifically 99% of the time in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. And I think one thing I would really like to dig into a little bit. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience. I had a quick look on your LinkedIn profile before we jumped on the call this morning, and it's a really interesting history that you've got because even back in sort of early 2000s, you're an MD of a technical hardware, computer hardware business,
Yeah.
and then went on to found a business. So I think for the listeners and viewers today, it'd be really good just to kind of go through some of that backstory as well and how some of those learnings have kind of led you to where you are today, essentially.
Yeah. So I mean, sort of stepping back, I started selling computer components. Was my first business. Left uni, not quite sure what to do. Like a lot of people. Like you get your degree, and it's like, I knew that I was going to do my own thing. It's just sort of in my blood, in my family, to run businesses and run a business, and sort of always spent a lot of time as a kid sort of working with my dad and sort of learning from him. And then left uni, wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but basically short version is I had an opportunity, met a chap that sold computer components, and very, very quickly in the space of like a couple of years, I got the contract with Mastercare, which is now known as Know How. So when you buy anything from back then, PC World, Couriers, Comet, and you sent it back, it was faulty potentially, you'd send it back to Mastercare, which is now Know How. Yep. And basically I got the contract to buy everything computer related. And it sort of all happened in probably, like I say, two and a bit years. Got that contract. I'm sort of 27 years old, circa 27, 28. And we're selling secondhand computers. So we get these computers, but you're talking in the hundreds, if not thousands at a time. And it was at a time when a new PC might be like £2,000, £3,000 for a high-end sort of Packard Bell. I don't know if those listeners can remember the brand even. But we had such a good sort of purchase rate that the margins were really good. So very quickly we were able to, it's a very, very profitable business when PCs were really, really valuable. And we sort of built that business from almost like a market stall in Lincolnshire, and then built that into a unit and then a bigger unit. And then we had, when I finished that business, we had sort of 20,000 square feet, 40 people. But during the latter years of that business, there was this thing called the internet that sort of came along, if you like. We're talking 20 years ago almost. And it was right, how are we going to get people to this store that we'd got? But we were really located sort of in the depths of Lincolnshire, more in the in the countryside of Lincolnshire, a place called Hemswell Cliff, and it's an old RAF base, very busy at a weekend, but not many people coming in the week. So we built a website, and it was quite like an Excel sheet really, but it really because computer components were so volatile at the time, it relies, as it still does, very much on exchange rates, and sort of shipping from primarily China and Asia. There was those companies that could advertise quick, the price change. So it was like, right, we'll build this one-page Excel site. And very quickly we got, it got very busy very quickly because we were able to compete. And then it was like, right, what if we can actually take orders on the web? This is where SEO, and this is the sort of the transition into the business I have now. So we built a site, where we could actually trade and take credit cards, etc. And we built that business. I can remember probably at the peak, this is going back probably about 16 years ago, we were walking in on a Monday to like 500-600 orders. But I learned SEO, and that's sort of where the passion for that came from, and still is there, very much so. So it would be, ultimately, if I could rank at the time, graphics cards, on page one, which we very easily did back then. I used to get a lot of orders, and I used to get visits to the store. And then as the computer business, the margins sort of shrank, it became very obvious that the industry, was very, very tough in the latter years. So and as that was happening, it was like a lot of companies that we were working with. So like brands like eBuyer, for example, a company that we did a lot of business with, on the computer business, buying and selling with them. They were like, how come you're on page one for graphics cards? We're not on page one for graphics cards, and they're hundreds of times bigger than my business, but they're sort of SEO. So I started doing some consultancy for them and the guys that owned that at the time. Another friend of mine ran a South African bank that was trying to sort of penetrate the UK on the car finance side of things. So those two companies I started doing a little bit of consultancy for, but just really as favors for friends, because I was doing business with them. One of them is one of my best friends, and one of them was a good friend through work and doing a lot of business. So I started doing some consultancy with them, and that's sort of where the agency came from. So it's like, well, do you know what? I'll do a little bit of consultancy then on the side, just me and another chap who's with me still, Andy. And we had these sort of two clients. And then somebody else was asking us, and somebody else. I was like, And then we got an opportunity to sell the e-commerce business that we had at the time. So I sold that business and sort of, burnt the boats and went all in on the agency, which is sort of close to 13 years ago, 14 years, sorry, nearly 14 years. It'll be 14 years in November where I've been in the industry space. And then that's where we set up SEO Traffic Lab, was our first agency, which is still, and now we run two agencies. We have SEO Traffic Lab and EcomOne, but EcomOne is very much our focus.
Yeah. Do you think that's kind of pivoted more recently because of the demand for specialists? So a lot of the time, e-com managers, heads of e-com are looking for people with a lot of specific experience just within e-commerce. So I'm assuming that EcomOne was born out of the kind of SEO agency because you spotted that as a trend and thought, actually, no, we need to double down and focus now, which is something that we're seeing a lot of at Scaled as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much, as SEO Traffic Lab initially, we'd have sort of two types of client that would come to us. The sort of B2B, somebody that wants the phone to ring, the forms to be filled in, more traditional B2B business, and then you'd have that e-commerce business. Now, as an agency, it's very difficult to market to those sorts of business, and very difficult to standardize the systems within the business and deliver, consistently. So we made the decision almost 5 years ago to launch EcomOne. And now that's really, that's just where we've really had a real nice sort of trajectory, really, especially the last year or so. And I do prefer, I 100% prefer the e-com side. It's very much, you're selling things. You can report on that, very easy. Yeah. Whereas lead gen relies on, a lot of uncontrollable elements, potentially, i.e. somebody following up with a phone call or a form fill, which is out of our control. Whereas reporting on e-com, there's still a bit more to it than obviously just sales through the checkout. But that, if we can, we're charging X amount per month and we're generating X amount per month, and we can see that through the various verticals we're working in, through the different services we're offering. So it's just a lot better in terms of retention and longevity as clients. So yeah, we prefer e-com, and it's very much what I've done all my life, e-com, like I say, from the computer days.
Yeah. Sure.
It's very relatable, and some of the guys work for me now that worked for me, like I said, 20 years ago in that business. So, we had the warehouse full of stock that nearly all of our clients have. We have the experience and understanding around having, maybe £500,000 sitting in the water on containers, and understand the importance of shifting certain things at certain times and the cash flow challenges around that. And so, yeah, and I think that's just very relatable to our sort of perfect clients, really. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that puts you in a really unique position. Many moons ago, I was kind of client side, and that really helped when I moved agency side, because you can understand the pain points and the things that they're struggling with. And like you say, you understand all the logistical side of things as well, and completely get the point about e-commerce being a lot more sort of closer to the cash register as it was, because what does a marketing qualified lead mean to then someone to go and convert it is too far away from the cash register. So makes sense from a retention perspective as well. I've got to ask, just back with your computer hardware piece, were you optimizing for like a, what was it, 125 modem or something like that?
I think it was like a 256 meg hard drive, or maybe an 8 gig. Oh, it was crazy when you'd have like probably, I was trying to think, a 32 gig hard drive, and it was like £800. Literally. And then all of a sudden, like, flat screen monitors came out.
Well, at least they're easier to ship than those great big sort of.
That was it. I mean, we were bringing in containers of CRT at one time. Literally, square old-fashioned screens. And then we were bringing in containers of TFTs. Obviously, you can get almost at least double from memory. In a container, so obviously a lot more valuable, but a lot more.
Lots of valuable lessons learned along the way.
A lot of fun memories, to be honest. It's a brilliant business. I do look back very fondly of that trading business and the e-commerce, absolutely. And that I still bump into quite a lot of people that work with us in that business. We probably had about 120 people through the years working that business, and I see a lot of them still, and I've got a lot of them friends, and they're like, "Oh, that was great times," Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, if we can, let's jump back to EcomOne, to the present day. It'd be good to know a little bit more about EcomOne as a business outside of what you do. So, like how many people you employ, and if you can share anything around kind of turnover or anything that might be helpful to our viewers to understand the size and stage that you're at as an agency, that'd be really good from a top level perspective.
So we're a team of 20. We have 18 full-time people in the team, 2 part-time. We are recruiting for 4 more people right now. So I anticipate sort of circa 24, 25 by the end of this year, obviously depending on when this episode goes live. We are on track for a 27% increase on revenue year on year at the moment, 27% year on year. And that's our sort of focus at the moment, is a 25% year on year increase, which obviously as the years go on, it does get more challenging. But I do feel we've done a lot of work in the last sort of 6 months or more, to position ourselves and to be able to deliver more work. So we've got a lot of key hires in the last year, a lot of experienced hires in the last year. We just invested in some new premises literally a couple of weeks ago, which has been really exciting for the team. I'm a big believer in having, in it's a bit of a debate in the agency space, but having a really nice office, and a really nice office environment. So that's something we've always had offices. We've never been fully remote, apart from when we had to be, sort of thing. But we do offer, of course, that flexibility to work from the office or not. But most people work sort of 3 days, 2 days in. But yeah, we have a nice office in the middle of Lincolnshire, Lincoln Town city centre.
And how have you found changing culture since moving to a new office in a new space?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So like I say, we moved in a couple of weeks ago, and there's definitely like a spring in everyone's step with the new space. We've always had fairly nice offices, to be fair, but the new place is quite special. We're building a podcast studio, which should be finished next week, in the space. We've sort of bought everything new again, so it's all very shiny and new. But I think we've got sort of floor to ceiling windows around the front of the offices, which is give a real nice natural light. But I think the core thing is, we do a lot of stuff that's very collaborative. It's obviously working in SEO, PPC, those departments, for example, working very much together. So we've just got some really nice breakout space, that we've had, different areas in the space and in the wider co-working building that we're in as well. But yeah, sort of 2 weeks in, it's almost like it's a new business because of the, not just because of the office, but and then that's timed quite nicely with we've got, I think, 3 new hires that have just started with us in the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. So we've got this sort of new office space. A lot of people really like want, in more than ever. I did someone's appraisal yesterday, and that's somebody in the business that really does 2 days in and 3 days at home. And she was sort of saying, I might even consider doing 3 days in the office. Is that, this is somebody that really likes working from home, which is fine. But they're like, oh, I think I'm going to come in and just the vibe around the business.
Yeah, I think it's we're seeing a bit of a shift across our clients at the minute in terms of people wanting to go back in a little bit more. Obviously, there's been a lot of press recently around Zoom forcing people back into the office and all of the good bits and pieces. But I think if you can create that culture where people want to be there, give them the flexibility as well, that's got to be the way forward, hasn't it? And it's great to hear with that, coupled with some new blood in the business, always lift everybody else around it, doesn't it? I remember it well.
Yeah, I mean, it's flexibility. I think it's the key. Everyone's individuals. We have certain days and certain times that we do like everybody in, but it's not. We don't insist on it unless it's a client. We've got a client coming in and things like that. But like today, I'm sat in the office right now, and it was only me here. On a Friday. It's a Friday morning. We're shooting this at lunchtime, and it's just me here on today. On Monday, there might be like half a dozen or a dozen people in. Tuesday, Wednesday, there'll probably be more like the full team in. Thursday maybe as well, but Fridays is a nice quiet day. So those that do come in on a Friday, it's like, again, like you can really focus down on certain days as well when there's not so many in, and then certain days we know are days for clients coming in, so then there's a real buzz around that as well. We've created some really nice sort of areas for clients for client meetings, and we can sort of get sort of 20, 25 people if we need to. Not very often we have that many people in a meeting, but if you're dialing in from different countries and whatnot, we've got some real nice spaces for that.
Nice. So it sounds like it's all moving in the right direction. It'd be good to get an understanding of, for you personally, obviously having had such a rich history in business and family being in business before. And what does success look like, and how big do you want to get, and how big is big enough, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. How big? I mean, we have a vision for the business over the next few years, which I'll share some of that with you. But I don't have any aspirations to get to like 100 people. I think I had just shy of 40 people, 39 people in my previous business for like 8-9 years. We want to grow 25% a year for the next we're sort of obviously just over halfway through this year. So 25% this year, the next year and the year after. And then really just to continue on that track for sort of the next 4 or 5 years. But that doesn't mean increasing the headcount by 25%. It's getting a lot leaner, getting a lot more profitable. We are pretty profitable as we are, but just working on the margins more, working on the offer more, improving the value that we offer, and increasing, and ultimately, improving what we charge. We took some business on this week, and just sort of got the team together as a really, sort of a real sort of aspirational client that we won, and the fees that we charge are sort of 10 times the fees that we charged, obviously, back in the day when we started this business. So to keep growing the value of the retainers, to just continue to make the place a great place to work. But I don't sort of have I want to be, get to 100 people to, that sort of size business, sort of 40 people is sort of the limit, really. 42 is the magic number, actually.
Why 42 specifically? Is that just because of the multiples of 25%, or?
No, it's 21 is our sort of 21 was our target for 3 years. Well, we're going to hit that in about 9 months of setting the target, so we're well in front by a long way. And then it was just to then double that headcount. So that's where that comes from, really. But it's, when I say that the headcount is not the focus, obviously the profitability really and the growth around that. Obviously, I don't just want to be growing the headcount and losing money. We're not at that phase where we're building at the sake of trading at a loss. That's not what we're about.
Sure. No, that's really useful, and thank you for the context. It'd be really interesting as well just to dig into some of the other challenges that you have as a founder, like I sometimes think it probably isn't seen by everybody, but what are the challenges and the things that keep you awake at night? Obviously, you've been in business a long time. You've seen a lot of things come and go, which I think is great from an experience perspective. But are there still things that keep you awake at night? And if so, what are those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a bit of a thing where I think I have pinched this from somebody else, but I can't quite recall who it is. But if I'm lying in bed at night and I'm thinking about a certain thing, and I'm thinking about it again the next night, then the next day or damn close to the next day, I know I need to sort that thing out. So if it's about an individual, if it's about a particular client, a particular team member, a particular challenge in the industry, it's dealing with those things that are keeping you awake, if there are any, very, very quickly, because most of that pain is in your head rather than in the reality of actually trying to deal with that thing. But I think, for me, the last sort of 9 months has been about the move to the new office. So that's been keeping me up at night, the move, and that's it's quite a big step for us.
Schemes and decor and things like that, or
say that again, sorry.
You mean like color schemes and decor, or is it just kind of the whole logistics?
Yeah, all that, yeah, schemes and decor, and signing a 5-year lease, for hundreds of thousands of pounds. And
I was joking about the color and the decor, but it is actually really important.
Well, you joke. It is like I think I spent a whole day in London doing a furniture tour of like 10 furniture stores, and then coming home with this head full of 14 boardroom tables and 300 different styles of chair. Oh God! But then I genuinely lie awake some nights. I mean, this may sound ridiculous, but I'm so excited about my business. I really enjoy what I do, and I had this conversation earlier today. I met a friend for breakfast, and I said last week, I said I couldn't sleep on like Tuesday night. I said because I was just wanting to be back in the office doing, really enjoying what I do. But I think if I say, I think if we've got a particularly like a new client coming on board that's a real aspirational client, I'm really thinking about all the chess moves around making sure everything goes 100%. So we're spending a lot of time this last year, and it's a big focus for us around our SOPs. So I spent a lot of time on the detail. So, some of probably the bizarrest little elements of detail, I spend probably time awake at night thinking through this, a typical client starts with us, there's a process that then triggers, as it would do with most agencies, make, more and more automations and AI involved, so I think it's probably more so thinking about keeping ahead of the game, which I think is crucial, critical in agency. It's very easy now, as it has been for many years, to build a website and be an agency and it's very easy, which is great. Its barrier to entry to the market is minimal, but staying ahead of the game and and on top of things, and I think we do a lot of good stuff around that.
Yeah, but I understand that is can be a bit of a challenge. So in terms of sort of problems that you might have faced in the past, what would you say in your current growth journey? What's the problem that you're most proud of fixing?
Problem we're most proud of fixing. I think maybe not so much. I think when we were obviously locked in, we weren't able to go out. We relied very, very heavily on our events, prior to COVID, and obviously during COVID we weren't able to go to events. So I think we very quickly jumped on the sort of right. We need to be creative. A lot of our business came from going to events and speaking at events. So how we overcame that was we launched our own podcast, and that's been real transformational for the agency. Been able to get an hour or half an hour with a real absolute genius in the space, or a real, whether that's a tech partner, another agency doing something really, really smart. So we've been able to overcome that sort of the fact that we've not been able to go and do as many events. Obviously now you can. And then that podcast has become a real major part of our business now.
Yeah, it takes time as well, doesn't it? Right, for podcasts to grow, as we know ourselves. We're
yes,
just have to keep doing it, and bringing in sort of inspirational people or interesting people to talk to and contribute to it, and it's a challenge. It takes time, but
Yeah,
they do start.
yeah,
I'm glad to hear that yours is going well. You've obviously got your own studio set up and a professional microphone now as well.
yeah. We're getting there. We're getting there. I think we've done 157 episodes now, so it's sort of one a week for well over 3 years now. So at the beginning it was like, oh, but it's almost like I'm a big believer in, we got locked down, so okay, what are we going to do about it? If something else happens in the business, is having that right mindset to deal with those what are potential setbacks, but they're never going to stop, to a degree, so it's what you're going to do about it, and having that team around you with that mentality, right? That's the sort of fixed versus growth mindset around, whatever may come. Of course, you're not expecting stuff to come at you every day because you're building a strong team, and you're building strong SOPs, and you've got perfect fit clients ideally, and so on and so on. But even with every tick box in the world, there will obviously be things that come along. So I think having that sort of growth mindset around the way that you tackle those challenges is absolutely key.
Yeah, no, and that's a really, really interesting point. And lots of learnings, and we've touched on lots around things like everything from kind of culture to your growth journey and backstory, where you are right now, your vision, and 25% growth year on year to get to that magic number of 42. And it all sounds like it's heading in the right direction, which is fantastic. Just quickly, let's have a couple of quick fire questions, if that's okay, and then we'll get wrapped up, conscious of your time today as well. So what would you say are the top 3 attributes for a successful agency owner to have?
So I think you've always got to be curious and learning, so I think, dedicating time, whether that's an hour a week, and be just really passionate about the thing that you're doing. So, there's elements in an agency or in our agency that I know I'm quite good at, but there's also elements that I know I'm not great at. So I think, identifying those, it doesn't mean you don't go and do the things you maybe don't enjoy, but there's 2 schools of thought, really, sort of tooling up on all those other areas. But that's can be quite challenging if it's really like, it's like you're trying to push against stuff, but getting the right people in the right seats, so I think that's been a real change for us in the last sort of couple of years, getting some real good hires in place. And I think that around, we touched on it before, but that growth mindset, things will come along. So that to get your mind in that space, I think that's where you've got to spend time on yourself. So making sure, you're not just, if you're doing those 70, 80-hour weeks running your agency and it's just sat behind a desk, you're not in any fit shape really the following week to do, the really good present that you need to do. So it's getting time out of the office. I'm very much, what works really well for me is sort of circa 3 months sort of sprints, like really fairly, right, this 3 months, and we work in 3-month sprints as the business. So I get the team together every 3 months and we talk about the vision, the big picture, the 42 that I mentioned, the amount around the people and the things that we want to hit. But then this quarter, these 3 months, we're going to do this. And then everyone in the business knows that what their contribution is and how that contributes to the bigger picture. And then when that 3 months is over, I usually take a trip, so getting those trips in the diary, 3 or 4 good trips, and there's surprising how many amazing events there are around the world to do with what we do. So you can tie in a nice trip to, I was in Vietnam in February at an SEO conference for 11 days, which was pretty cool.
Brilliant. No, it's getting big out there as well, isn't it? Sort of SEO growth and sort of agency growth is something that's popping up a little bit more and more.
There's so much resource out there now. Obviously, you guys with your great podcast, but there's a lot of different groups around agency growth. So having those conversations with agency owners that are, I think having an hour with an agency owner that's, if you're at 10 headcount and you want to get to X, or you're at 1 million turnover, you want to get to 2, an hour with somebody that's in the same spot, or obviously it's there above, doing that 2 million already, it's literally gold. And those networks exist, so it's sort of getting out your office, getting in a train, going and, meeting people, going to events, a lot of broader events in, whether that's e-commerce or development, a lot of different events. And that usually then leads to partnerships, and partnerships are usually, I feel, one of the, the best ways to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really, really, really insightful. So just before we wrap up, Richard, if anybody wants to follow you or reach out to you, what's the best way? And I'm assuming you're happy for them to drop you a note on
Yeah,
something.
sure. So, I mean, my email is richard@ecomone.com. So also go to ecomone.com to see what we're doing at the agency, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, Richard Hill. And yeah, that's the best way.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really insightful listening to where you are right now, where you've been historically, lots of the learnings along the way, and I wish you all the best in your growth journey with EcomOne, and look forward to hearing about it when you get to 42 people.
Thank you, Richard. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.